Yes, Bula Mai. Bula Vinaka siamo mai. Naka panera mulo. Naka pakalebsar na siamo tiko mai vekemuni na veikauwataki. Vinaka pakalebsar na rongota tiko na kali malumu. Ngoli tiko ene na yacova vinaka ni siga nikua. Singa vakarombuka tiko mai Viti. Singa lutulevu tiko ngoi Hawaii. Vavini vinaka sar tiko ni vakalebe vekemuni na nomuni siamo tiko mana madongo. Endo tiko na madawa vakana nomi tiko kina o Rotuma. Vavini vinaka sar tiko ni vakalebe vekemuni na nomuni siamo tiko mai na singa tusiti na varong tiko kina be na marama o Mrs Maria Teringamoto. Sangkai tarava mai o Bunuai Thane Lady Fogan, turanga archaeologist do Bakikeli, mena University mai o Kalandi, sangkai tarava mai na Veitalanoa o Fesaitu Solomoni. Vavini Vinaka sar kina vakalebe vekemuni na nomuni vakamurete kumana ivatavata go liku ana ni Bula Vinaka fuata yang Bula Vinaka hanise mau moresio ke ora mai Hamilton Vinaka vakalebsar na siamo tiko mai na Veitalanoa nikua vavini Vinaka sar vekemuni keda na wekada Mai Rotuma oni siamo tiko mai ena Vinaka nikua vekemuni talangani na guys siamo mai muri kita vakambula tuka yani na bubale na bunindilo mai Hawaii oni taka ni rongo Vinaka tuka yani na vio liva ni Veitalanoa ena Vinaka ni siga nikua klani oni songo tumbu tiko mai Viti oni taka ni na dolangona leka go esa na yaliani na mate takabikeda tiko ngana bese vuravura na kovindi tinkadiwa ya oni taka ni na Veitalanoa nikua na kuitkeda leso na talanoataka kene no Rotuma ya da marau sar vakalevu ni tiko matkeda nikua indona nonda vulangi vulangi tokai vulangi toke mai tiko ni nonda Veitalanoa Vinaka nikua o George Faktaufon. Nisambulu Vinaka George.
Yeah, Nisambulu Vinaka, Dr. Tarisi. And thank you for the invitation to be in your show tonight. But more importantly, thank you for dedicating this week so that Rotumans can celebrate Rotuma Day, which falls on the 13th of May. And if the Rotumans have forgotten, this will be our 140th anniversary since our island was ceded to Great Britain in 1881. So we're very happy that we have this week so that we can reminisce and talanoa with you about Rotuma, its people, its language, its culture, and look to what the future might be for Rotuma.
Dia na to dok Vinaka pakalebsar George na nomu silema na nomu gauna. Thank you so much for giving up your time to be with us tonight. As you said, this is a week specially dedicated to Rotuma, and it's a week leading up to the Rotuma Day, which is coming up on the 13th of May. And so we are really thankful that Mrs. Ringamoto mentioned the day as well as Fesaitu Solomoni, and now you've highlighted it again that it's a very special anniversary, which is 140 years of its anniversary of its the deed of cession, to Great Britain for Rotuma. Isa, Vinaka bakaliw. To
And also,
kickstart out.
it's 51 years since we came along with Fiji, since 1970. So that's another event to celebrate.
Another milestone.
Another milestone.
So Vinaka Sarah for logging in from Nandi. I hope the weather is okay in Nandi at the moment.
Yeah, weather is fine. A little bit cloudy, but it's okay. Still warm.
Oh, Vinaka Valevo. And yeah, we're all thinking of you all in Fiji, and I know everyone all around the world are part of this, pandemic. But let's hope that the lockdown you're having in Fiji will be sorted out as soon as possible.
Yes, we all hope so too.
Nakavalevo. Yes, Nakavalevo Sarah George to kickstart our Talanoa tonight. I'm just wondering whether you would be able to introduce yourself to us. Just give us a short Talanoa about your life, your upbringing in Rotuma and your family, or some interesting highlights of your childhood that you'd like to share with us, George.
Naka, Dr. Teresi, I would like to start by saying a few words in Rotuma, if I may.
Sure. Done.
Noa'ia ne la Rotuma ne hafoim se talanoa ne la sokopunte. Ngo orotek ni rongrong is la poisin, la huak o sahe, is ne puka Rotuma FSC matarau sama 5 holders, FSC matarau sama ono hun fumata. Tapi mesti iris ne asu yauta kata asu Rotuma iris Viti ne hanotu. Mina Mauri lela Rotuma tiranti iris asu pohyong ni FSC matarau sama no hulda ma ponga tiene sok Rotuma FSC matarau liam tarau FSC matarau sama 5 hulda se ono hulda is kop ma kal inyara da tema o ini sok so amnek ni talanoa di pengte la huak sa awa se au hita FSC matarau sama 5 hulda ma ono hulda ma you se tiene sok es hangat yauta ma tapi mesti on ma la ini tapin pasane de Rotuma utitan tutu ma ikut istusi muon it is the pola so is from Rotuma la utakas of Montessori. So once again, it's an honor to be here. Thank you, Dr. Teresi, for inviting me to be part of this Rotuma week. We thank God for all our lives, particularly those of us who are in Fiji going through all these challenges. It's our prayer that this virus will disappear sooner rather than later, so everybody can get back to normal life. As I said earlier, I'm not a linguist, not very good at the Rotuman language, although I speak fluent Rotuman. Neither am I an expert in the culture. So I think the best contribution I can make is to go back to the 1950s and the 1960s, where I grew up in that era. And the stories that maybe many Rotumans today weren't aware. And it's my hope that you could relate to it. Those who haven't been to Rotuma, maybe you could dream about it. And then I would like to talk about what I do and its implications for Rotuma and Fiji. And then we can go to a general session of Talanoa. So let me introduce myself. I'm George FAKTAUFON. I live in Nandi. I've been in Nandi for the last 37 years. I think this is the longest place I've stayed. Originally in Rotuma, I was born at Motusa. Last night we heard from Ito. She was born in Motusa.
Mm.
Her home was a stone's throw from mine. I knew her parents and her grandparents very well. And I grew up in Rotuma until I was 13 years old. Went to primary school, intermediate school. Motusa was the commercial center of the island in that era. We were the only village that had 2 primary schools. And then in addition to that, we had a secondary school, apart from the government secondary school. So Motusa was quite an active village in those days. I will go into more detail later, but that's where I originate from. Then I came to Fiji for further education from Form 4 in 1962 and spent 5 years at Lilian Memorial School, level 11. And finished secondary school and started work straight away the following year. I was 18.5 years when I started work. Then having spent 15.5 years at the Air Pacific, I took early retirement in the early 1980s to pursue some studies. And I'll come back to that, the reason why I pursued those studies. And then went into some consultancy work, tried a private enterprise for 3 years, then unfortunately the coup of '87 saw an end to it. And then helped set up the Association of South Pacific Airlines, the organization which I still work for today. So that's a very short brief about myself. In all my life, I have only worked in the aviation industry and the tourism industry. So I'd like to share a little bit of that towards the end of our talanoa session tonight.
Sandin. Sarong Vinaka na normally talanoa, and I'm glad that you have connections to Fesaitu, Solomon.
Yes.
Yes, Motusa, Vinaka. And when you came over to Lilin Memorial School, what's your any memories you can share about your time when you came over to Lilin Memorial School in the William?
Well, you know, when I grew up in Rotuma, there was really no desire to leave. Rotuma was so comfortable in that era. We had a good life. There were no poor Rotumans, although there were no rich Rotumans either. We had the land and the sea, and we ate fresh food and fruits and seafood. So for me, as a 12-year-old, there was really no desire. My aim was to complete, hopefully, Form 4, because that's as far as you could go then, and then join my father as a farmer and farm crops and raise cattle and chicken and pigs and enjoy Rotuma, maybe one day get married, raise a family. So that was really, I think for most kids at my age, that was our ambition. We heard about Fiji. A lot of our friends, close cousins came for further education here. But for me, I really had no ambition to come to Fiji at all. And I'll tell you what happened. In 1963, there was a Ministry of Education tour to the maritime islands, and they came to Rotuma. And the leader for that group was the late Semester Sikibo. I think he was the senior education officer or something of that sort. He saw us playing rugby one day. I found out all about this later. And then he confided in our head teacher then, the late Mr. Wilson Enia, that he liked 2 boys that he watched playing rugby because they played like Fijians. So he would like to arrange for them to come to Fiji. Because normally in Rotuma, we have up to Form 4. So majority of the kids would finish Form 4. Then if they passed, then they would move to Fiji to complete the education. There's some who would leave after secondary entrance. They would then apply for school, and when they get accepted, they would move to Fiji. Well, I had no intention of doing that, but then on hindsight, when you look back, I was almost like coerced to fill the form to go to Lillian. No other school. Lillian was #1, and normally you put choices. You put Lillian in second and third. You put mine, Lillian #1, #2, #3. The other boy whom the late Senator Sigbo picked was from my own village. His name was Enoke Albert. It's a very sad story about him. Then when we finished our secondary entrance and the results came out, then my father called me one day and said, "Oh, you have to prepare to go to Fiji because you're going to Lillian Memorial School." And I'd forgotten that I applied. And then it dawned on me that I was really going, and I really didn't want to go. Anyway, Enoch and I came to Fiji with other students in our class 8, and they all went to different schools. I went to Lillian, Enoch went to Sukuna. So I spent 5 years in Lillian. We arrived on a Monday, I remember vividly, about lunchtime. And then I think it was Yanawai at the time. And then in the afternoon, we were taken straight to school. It's a boarding school. I boarded there. So imagine a 12-year-old coming from the island, straight to the boarding school. Everybody spoke in Fijian. I had no idea what they're talking about. It was a very lonely few days at Lillian. But I got used to it. There were some Rotuman boys there at Lillian at the time, so it was okay. One thing I learned at Lillian, everyone who went to Lillian vouched for that. You came out much prepared to face the world than anyone else, because you learn how to cook, you learn how to wash your clothes, how to iron your clothes, you go to the tete, you do everything. You learn to improvise. You know, my first meal at Lillian that evening was dal. I'd never heard of dal, and I didn't like dal. So it was really a culture shock for me. And I think it's the same with most kids that come from the island, because in those days, Lillian, RKS, KVS, they were really, really meant for the Veiyanu kids, and the Yasas Savakara. So we have a lot of the Manuleba boys and girls, and some from the West and the Maritime Islands. So really, I really enjoyed the school at Lillian. They taught us not only in school, the curriculum, but also the religious teaching was very good for us, because it places in much better state when we live there, Lillian. They said when we leave double level, we can afford to skip church for 1 year because of the amount of church we attend in double level. But it was quite good. It was very, very good school. It was a co-ed school. We had girls and boys, and a mixed school. We have a lot of our Indian friends, many all day scholars, only Fijians and Rotumans, and some island boys were boarding, and as well as the girls. So it's a very nice experience there. And I mentioned about my friend Enoke Albert. He eventually became a teacher. Then he married a Fijian lass that he met, and he was supposed to do law. And it's a very sad and unexpected occasion that the boat that he went sank, and everyone on board died, including him and his young family. I think it was Ulula Kemba.
I remember, yes.
That was in the, I think it was in the 70s. It happened in the 70s. So I lost, I never saw him again. He was one of my very close friends. We came to the same village, we grew up together. A really sad occasion. So that's my school in double level. After that, I went out looking for jobs. You know, the USP, I think, opened in 1968, I think, from memory. And in those days, you know, only the bright ones end up in scholarships to go for university or now going to USP locally. Many of my schoolmates and girls, we ended up finding a job. And you know, in the 60s and in the early 70s, the government was the employer of choice because it paid much better salary than the commercial companies. So a lot of my schoolmates ended up working for the government. But then I didn't really want to work for government. I had no, I had some areas I wanted to work. I wanted to be an architect. Applied to work for an architectural firm. Did not get through. I applied for engineering. Went for interview at SPSM in those days, PWD, and Fiji Airways. So of the three, I got accepted at Fiji Airways to be an engineer, aircraft engineer. But I missed the first intake. So I had to wait for the second intake, which was around September, I think it was. So I was mucking around doing odd jobs, worked as a lorry boy for one of the, I think it was a major, taking people shopping, particularly expatriates shopping to the domain and work in the wharf for a while. I worked with Daniela Veitata at the wharf for a while.
Wow.
Packing all the ginger and the bananas.
Wow.
Then one day, in those days, the commercial firms, the jobs were hardly advertised. It's a matter of who you know. If you know people working there, then they get you in. So it's not unusual to find in commercial companies relatives or friends of people all over the place. And that's the same with the Fiji Airways at the time. One of my relatives worked there, and one day he came back from work and he said to me, do you want to work? I said, yeah, but I'm waiting for the intake for the aircraft engineer in September. This was about May. He said to me, well, there's a vacancy in the commercial division. I said, what do they do? He said, oh, they make bookings for the airline. I said, well, I don't mind. I was really desperate for a job then. Because one of the reasons I had to look for a job was my father was sick. In fact, he began to be sick before I left Rotuma. He eventually passed away in 1967, so I never saw him again. They suspected he died of malaria. See, he was a soldier in the Second World War. He went to the Solomons.
I see.
So suspected that he might have died from malaria, but I don't know. Anyway, I was desperately looking for a job to earn some money so I can send home. Because my father was not farming anymore then, and it was only my mother and my 4 young siblings. Then he said, there's a vacancy, would you like to give me an application, handwritten application? So he sent it to the people at Fiji Airways and just wait and see. So I did. And then on Friday, the same week, I was called for an interview. So I went for an interview, the old tribal armies at the time. And I got it. So one of the questions the guy, I remember vividly, he asked me, well, why are you interested in this job? It's a reservations officer's job. You do bookings for the airlines. So I didn't know what to say. So I said, well, I'd like to meet people. He said to me, son, where I'm going to send you, you're not going to meet anybody. You're in the back room. So I thought, well, that's it. I've just lost my job. Anyway, I got accepted and I started work the following Monday.
Wow.
So I spent 15 and a half years
Wow.
Fiji Airways then, it changed its name to Air Pacific in 1972.
Right.
Then I decided to leave and go for further education. One of the reasons I wanted to pursue further education was in 1983, Fiji Airways was technically bankrupt. We had, two of us were commissioned by the board to do with our CEO to carry out a strategic 5-year strategic plan to see how the airline could come out of it. So we were working with Air New Zealand at the time. I think Rotuma made arrangement with I think it was David Lange, who was the Prime Minister of New Zealand then. I think they were determined that New Zealand would help us develop the plan. So it was during our work in Auckland in developing the plan that I realized that experience in itself is not enough. Because we were working with guys with degrees, mathematicians, commerce. So I said to myself, I said to my friend, I said, look, you know, we're fooling ourselves. If we want to continue working for Air Pacific, we need to go and get some education.
Wow.
We had no idea what they're talking about. Anyway, they helped us develop the plan. They taught us many things. We learned a lot from them. And then we presented the plan. And that's when I decided I have to go. There's no point in me staying because I could see my limits by remaining there. If it was growing, and if I don't have any broaden my knowledge, then I don't think there's room to progress. So that's the reason why I left. We were overstaffed at the time.
I see.
So the company offered early retirement, so I was one of those who took early retirement. So,
wow, that's amazing. So when you wanted to go for further studies, where did you plan to go?
Well, when we were doing the study, we discovered from our CEO, the late Aquila Sabo was our CEO at the time, that there were British scholarships available to study, particularly air transport. You know, early on, the British government gave scholarship for many of our pilots to go to England for training, and there were scholarships available for other areas of airline operations. So I looked at what was available, and transport economics is one of those. So that's where I picked. So I went to study transport economics, and I found it very helpful in what I do later on in the association, because it gives me a much broader understanding of airline economics, marketing, and network planning, which we were doing it in Air Pacific, but you know, very rudimentary way. We were not doing that. So that's the reason I went. So there are other areas that were important in aviation, one of which is aerospace law. So later on, I did a diploma in aerospace law at McGill University in Montreal. Canadian scholarship.
That is amazing. Wow, I'm just hearing your story just shows how much humility you had to identify, you know, that you had, that you felt there was some lacking, you know, in your skill, and for you to be courageous, right? To take on the scholarship to go, in this case, to England and also to Canada. Wow, sa rong Vinaka did from a humble boy in Rotuma, you know, to be able to take up these roles. And it's very encouraging, I think, for many of our listeners, you know, to learn from somebody like you, George, you know, to take on a role like that, that you were not trained in, but you had the will, you know, to actually take on the role, even in the beginning when you went to, which was Fiji Airways at that time, to become a reservation officer. Yes, Vinaka, George. So now let's kind of go back into your highlight of being a young boy growing up in Rotuma. in the 1950s and the 1960s. Would you like to share some highlights of your time on Rotuma Island?
Thank you. I'm glad you brought us back to Rotuma. As I said earlier, I was born in Motusa. As we all know, Rotuma has 7 districts. Motusa is in the district of Itu, and Itu is in the west. I wanted to give you a little bit of history to Itu.
Yeah.
Legend had it that one of the chiefs in Itu became very friendly with a man in Itumuta, which is next door. Itumuta was part of Itu then. And then because of their friendship, he eventually gifted the land in Itumuta to his friend. Then Itumuta became a separate district, whereas previously it was part of Itu. So I said also that Motusa was the center of commerce. We had the 2 major trading companies, Morris Hutchins and Bench Phillip there in Motusa. We had the Rotuman Cooperative Association there in Motusa too. And we had 3 Gujarati families that had shops, drapery shops and tailor shops. They were all in Motusa. And then before Oinafa became an anchorage, the 2 main anchorages were based in Motusa. Motusa is in an isthmus. You have sea on both sides. So you have an anchorage on either side. So when the weather is no good on one side, the boat will go and anchor on the other side and vice versa. So there's a lot of activities happening in Motusa at that time. So growing up, we were almost like living in a town, small town like Levuka or Nosari. But one of the highlights of my early years in the 50s and the 60s was the freedom that we had. We really did not have much rules as kids because we knew exactly what we were to do. After school, we knew exactly what your chores are. Each family in Rotuma had at least pigs and chicken. Some would have goats, not many goats. Like my father had cattle. So our job as kids would be to feed the chicken and to feed the pigs every afternoon, 7 days a week. So we would go and feed them. We'd take the food, feed them, and amongst us, there would be other kids doing exactly the same thing. And that's how we spend our afternoons after school. And then on our way back, we would climb trees and play and then end up in the sea swimming. It's so free because there was nothing to worry about. And as I look back and then I compare to today's environment, I think today's children are missing a lot on the freedom that we had then. Not only the freedom, but everything was so fresh. The environment was so fresh. There was no pollution. The food was fresh. So I think this is one of the, as I look back, I probably didn't appreciate it then, but now looking back, I think this is one of the highlights. The other highlight is going fishing. I enjoy fishing because I started fishing, I can't remember when I was maybe 3 or 4. And you didn't have to go far. You just go in front and throw a line with some bait and you catch a fish. And the other thing that I enjoyed was during the May Gita session celebration, which we are celebrating next week. It was during the school holidays. So we had a 1 week of celebration at Aho government station. All sorts of shows and children games. We had athletics for the school as well as adults. So that was a real highlight. Everyone was looking forward to to the deep session celebration Rotuma. And then we have cultural shows and dances. So as kids, we learn how to dance the Rotuman dance, the culture, the tautonga, and we learn the idioms and the chants. Of course, the language is part of the curriculum. Everybody spoke Rotuman, proper Rotuman. I was interested to listen to some Ito last night.
Yes.
Because I think it's very, very important for the Rotuman language to be taught, particularly for the young people, those who do not, and also part Rotumans who don't normally speak Rotuman all the time, because it can disappear if we don't nurture the language. Because when we go to work, like myself, when I left Lilin, I spoke better Fijian then than I do today. Because for 50 years, I hardly spoke Fijian. I only spoke Rotuman and English. So I think it's important for the generations growing up now, Rotuman generation, that they go back to learning, particularly the language. I mean, the culture is important, but the language is so important. Especially as Ito said last night, the language is very unique. I don't think you find any similar type of language elsewhere. One of my Spanish friends said to me, you know, the Rotuman language is very similar to Spanish. And he was trying to encourage me to speak Spanish because we have the same vowels with the Spanish. So I said, oh, maybe I should try and learn Spanish. But, those were really the highlights of living in Rotuma. You know, when my father died, my mother and my siblings had to move to her home. But the tradition in Rotuma is that when you get married, you go and live in your father's side. So when my father died, they had to go back to their mother's home. So when I went back, since I came to Fiji, I've been going back to Rotuma quite regularly. Almost every decade I've been going back, except for two. I think the 90s I never went back, and the 2000s I never went back. So you know, I get to see the change that were happening in Rotuma over the last 50 odd years. And when we went back last year in 2020, we spent 2 weeks, and that's the first time in all my trips back to Rotuma to stay in Motusa. My previous trips, we stayed at my wife's village, which is in Lopta, or Nafa. So this time I had the opportunity to really look around my village, and as I said earlier, two things that I observed. One was I was saddened that the village looked very deserted, because I think half the residents that used to be there in the 50s and 60s have migrated or have moved elsewhere. So we see a lot of foundations, home foundations that were idle without any homes on it. And the second part, I think it was the population have diminished. A lot less people there than they were in those days. And I went to church on Sunday, and there were only 3 people at church that were over 80 years old. The rest were very young. In fact, they were the only 3 plus another person that I recognized. The rest were very young. So we have a very young Rotuman generation today. That's why it's so important to revive the culture and the language, so that as they grow up, they will remember that. And that's why air transport is so important for Rotuma, because boats take too long and so irregular. So transport is so important, so that Rotumans can go back more regularly than they have been in the past. I think what they need to do now is to try and talk to the airline to see if there's any way they could reduce the airfares. So that more Rotumans can go there. The airfare to Rotuma is too expensive at the moment.
Dina saranga.
So, and the sad part about it, we've just had a $13 million airport that was commissioned 2 years ago,
Right.
and we only have one flight a week.
Yes.
I mean that you need to make the airport more active than one flight a week, because
Then
it's such a lot of money to build an airport, and then looks like it's underutilized. So I think that's something the Rotumans need to do. The council maybe
then
to airline to see if they can do something to encourage more people to travel to Rotuma. The Rotumans want to go there, but I think we pay $600 return. It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. I remember Fesaitu visited her dad a few years ago, and yeah, that's what she mentioned. She said, "Wow, I couldn't believe, the price of a airfare," but she had to take the flight because the dad was not well. So I really admired her for taking that, trip, dedicating it to her dad. But you're absolutely right, George. Yeah, the airfare is just too high.
Yes. Yeah. Well, the airfares went down last year during the pandemic, but prior to that, you could pay as high as almost $1,000 return to Rotuma, and it's cheaper to go to New Zealand than go to Rotuma. So.
I remember Fesai to mention the same thing. It said it's more expensive to go to Rotuma, might as well just go to another country,
Yeah.
Wow. And you mentioned, George, you mentioned something about your late dad when he passed away, and one of the traditions in Rotuma was for your family to go back to your mother's side, or through the matrilineal side. Would you explain that
Yes.
a little bit more, if that's okay, George?
Yes, I really don't know what's the traditional thing behind that, but normally you'd live in your husband's land, and then I think it's understood by the women folks, and where if the husband dies before you, then you need to go back to your land. If my siblings were old enough and they were living in my father's land, then it wouldn't have been a problem for her to remain there. But when my father died, my siblings were very young. The youngest was only about 6 years old. So they were far from being married. So that's. But you see, the Rotuman custom, traditional land ownership is a little bit different from the Fijian with your Bula. And maybe Paul Carrot will talk about it on Sunday. But we don't have a Bula registration, but we have an unwritten understanding that you can count on both sides.
I see.
You can go and reside in your father's side, or you go and reside at your mother's side. And I think the reasoning behind that, because Rotuma is small, and if you follow the Fijian system, and then if one side is overcrowded while the other is not overcrowded, but you are forced to follow the paternal side, if the maternal side is not overcrowded, then you're stuck. You have no option. Whereas to be counted on both sides gives you the option, which worked very well for the Rotumans, and I think the majority of the Rotumans would like to keep that.
Vinaka for sharing those beautiful memories. If I can summarize it for those of us who are listening in, what George highlighted. First one is freedom. And this is just so beautiful when you were telling a story, because as you were saying, hey, when you were there, you never thought about it, but when you left, that's when you kind of hold it dearly in your heart, when you realize, wow, I had all those freedom. I like what you're saying when, after school, you go over to feed the pigs and the chicken and the goats and the cattle, and on the way, you jump in the ocean and swim. That is so beautiful. That's what a lot of people overseas, even in the United States, that's what they pay a lot of money for,
Yes,
right? Yeah, and you had it right there. So that's beautiful. So
and that's probably one of the reasons why I never wanted to leave. we had it all there. So why leave?
Why should you leave, right?
Yeah,
why? Yeah. So freedom. Number 2 is everything was fresh. Another one is when it comes to fishing. Definitely fish is a good source of omega-3 and protein. So no wonder everyone was healthy, and because they're eating fresh food. The other one you mentioned was you had a lot of fun, particularly with the celebration of the anniversary of Rotuma Day, which is coming up in May. And 1 week of celebration, that's a lot of fun.
Yes, it's a lot of fun. For kids, we really enjoy it because no school, and we can watch what's happening, have some free food. And that's a time when you eat things that you'd not normally eat, because everybody make lava and bring your lava pigs and your cows, and so it's a good week in Rotuma in those days. I don't know if they still continue to celebrate in that level or not, but very good time to be.
That is beautiful. And
but
also,
yeah. When we went back into South, also as I mentioned earlier, in the 50s and the 60s, everybody seemed happy, and surprisingly, I sensed the same thing when I went back in 2020. Although there had been a lot of changes, the families I spoke to seemed very happy, with very content. Content may be the right word.
Wow.
Because they had everything they needed. Obviously, it changed in terms of the cash economy now. Everybody, because they're used to having cash, they tend to rely a lot more on cash than they used to be 50 years ago. But apart from that, everyone that we saw at Talanoa seemed happy with what they had. So sometimes I wonder, when we talk about development, what do you achieve from development? What are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to modernize the way you live, or are you trying to make people happy? So you need to decide how you want to measure development in the island context.
Wow, dear Nasaranga, I think that's a very good point when it comes to development. Who are we developing this for? For what purpose?
That's why I said, those of us who don't leave the island, we better zip our mouth sometimes when it comes to development, and let the people do the talking. We can help, we can advise, but we should not be dominating the decision making. I think the people in the island should do that.
Dear Nasaranga, that's a very good point. Vinaka, George, for highlighting that. Sometimes we're the ones that are, forcing things. Oh, you need this, you need that. But if you ask them, I'm sure they'll say, no, we are fine.
Exactly. Well, that's my opinion. Many people may disagree with me, but and I have to grant it. I only spent 2 weeks there.
Right.
That's what I observed, and I know some people may disagree with me, but that's my humble opinion.
Right, Vinaka, George. And then you also mentioned that, growing up in Rotuma, you had the opportunity to be part of your own Rotuman culture, your dance, performing the tautonga, singing your chants and the idioms. Do you still remember some of those things, and do you share them with your grandchildren, maybe?
Tautonga, I'll never forget. The chants I had forgotten, and the what else? The chants, the how to weave baskets, those kind of things. I remember. I'll never forget those things. The idioms, I remember most of them. But you need to practice these things a lot, and in Fiji we don't normally practice. And we have special people to perform all those things when we have functions.
Yeah.
So we don't really have the opportunity to practice those things.
Wow.
But I think it defines who you are in all those things. It's very different from other Pacific Islands. I think each Pacific, I've been to all the Pacific Island countries, and each one has its own unique culture, the way they do things, even the diets different. So Rotuma has its own unique areas that it's unique to us.
Wow.
And I think that is keep them if they're good.
Yes, that's beautiful. And when you mentioned the baskets, George, you just reminded me, Professor Wilson Hereniko here in Honolulu, he weaves baskets every other day. He shares it with us that sometimes he walks along Waikiki and he looks at a branch of coconut falling down on the ground. He sits down and starts weaving. And he makes really beautiful baskets. So Vinaka level for sharing that memory.
He's a nice person, Professor Hereniko.
I'm hoping to, I've invited him to come along maybe on Sunday before Paul
That'll be lovely. I know he spends a lot of time in Rotuma. He's very keen on Rotuma culture and language. And him, Paul, Carrot, and the professor that came on your show the other night. I'd never heard of him before. But it's quite interesting listening to him. I'll try and find some of his material he wrote about Rotuma, because that'll be interesting.
He was going to email it to me. When he sends his article, I will send you a copy.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I'd love to read. I read most of Hereniko's writings, and also Alan Howard's. Very
nice. And then also, George, in terms of the other question we were going to talk about, like you also highlighted your work in the aviation industry. And, you were talking about working for Fiji Airways, and then it became Air Pacific in 1972. And then it changed again now to Fiji Airways. So in terms of your career, moving into aviation, what was the experience like for you in comparison to maybe what the aviation industry is like today?
Yeah, the aviation industry is, particularly airlines, it's a very volatile industry. There's a lot of things that are beyond our control. We are subject to so many things beyond our control: the economy, the weather, politics are involved, because the ability for airlines to fly from one country to another is governed by trade agreements, the trading service. So up till today, there is not a global system for air service agreement. So air service agreement is basically left to the states to determine. So it's on bilateral basis. So that's a challenge for what our association is trying to do, because we were trying to look at a multilateral type of arrangement where airlines can fly without much restrictions in between islands, so that we can reduce the cost. At the moment, we have airplanes that are sitting at airports that could not be used because the bilateral system doesn't allow that, because it's between two countries. Any third country that comes in to play is not allowed to participate in that agreement. So these are the challenges that we face. The other challenge we face in the Pacific is the limited market, home market. So what we do, we bring in tourists, and then after the holidays, we take them back. So it's very seasonal, it's very directional. Unlike in Australia, where in New Zealand, where you have almost a balanced inbound and outbound market. In the Pacific, it's very seasonal and it's very directional. So that's why it's very difficult when it comes to planning your airplane types, planning your network, where you're going to fly, where you're going to make money, because it's quite a expensive type operation. When you involve airlines, airplanes cost hundreds of millions of dollars today, compared to what it used to. So, you know, when you buy an airplane, you must make sure that it's the right airplane, because you're going to make a decision, you're going to make an investment, and if you buy that airplane and you realize that it's a wrong airplane, that's a very big mistake. So our association, the Association of South Pacific Airlines, it's a trade association made up of all the airlines, which are all government-owned, and the whole objective is to promote cooperation amongst the airlines, so that we can develop the air transport system, all the connectivity within the islands, and from the islands to our major markets of Australia and New Zealand. Politics, as I said earlier, is a part of the hindrance to what we're trying to do, because although it makes a lot of sense to try and get all the airlines to work together, the airlines themselves are nationally owned. So the priority for the airlines by their nation is for the interest of that nation, first and foremost. So if it conflicts with what we're trying to do multilaterally, so the national interest is paramount. So this is the problem. We've been asked to bring everybody together, but we haven't got the environment to make this model work. So this has been our challenge. We haven't been able to find a solution. Because one of the problems in the islands, when it comes to politics, a lot of changes happen in governments. And also, many governments don't have aviation policies. And even some who have policies, they change when new government comes in.
I see.
But when you have in aviation, you need long term. You can't afford to plan for something short term, because the investment you require for planning purposes. So you need something. You're looking at no less than 10 years, if you like. So you need some stability within that period to be able to plan properly. And if you don't have that environment, then it's very difficult. And that's why we have a lot of financial issues for our national airlines, because of the environment that they operate in. There's no opportunity to reduce your costs. We don't have the economies of scale. We're too small, and that's why the need for everybody to work together. That's the only way you can achieve economy of scale. Individually, if you have only one airplane and if it falls down, then you've got no option. So that's why we need to work together. If 3 airlines work together and they have 4 or 5 airplanes, at least they can help each other without burdening one airline to invest, put all that money in the airplanes. You look at PGA, it's got a huge investment, multi-million-dollar investment for airplanes that, because of the COVID, they're not earning revenue. So that's a big challenge for PGA. And it's not only for Fiji. All the Pacific Islands have the same challenges. The airlines are mostly grounded. So we not only have COVID had really put a lot of challenge to aviation in the Pacific, not only for the airlines but for the infrastructure, the airports, the navigation aids, because there are very few activities happening at the airports. And the airports are not earning revenue to be able to provide maintenance for these facilities. It becomes a huge challenge. And this is something the governments will need to look at, not only for providing the necessary financial support for the airlines to recover from this pandemic, but also to ensure that the infrastructure of the airports, the the runways and the navigation aids are properly maintained, and they are in operational order, and they're complying with the regulations. So it's a big challenge brought by this COVID.
Yes.
As though we don't have enough problems of our own.
Di na Sarah, di na
I think
to.
it's made it even worse.
Yes, no, I'm really pleased. We're all very grateful that we can have someone like you with the vast experience, working in the aviation industry, to provide that perspective for many of us who are listening in. Because many of us, like for me, I'm just a passenger when I fly. I just book my plane ticket, arrive at the airport, and then everything is like rolling smoothly. But there's a lot of work behind the scene.
Oh, there is, yeah. And for the Pacific Islands, including Fiji, when they talk about the aviation industry, they look at pilots and engineers.
Yes.
But it's a lot more than in the aviation industry, the pilots and engineers. The commercial side, that's the management side, and this is what's lacking amongst our regional airlines. We don't have enough local people who are interested or dedicated enough to pursue a career in airline management. And that's why we have a lot of expatriates in the airlines, because we need them, but we need a system where we can train and develop local people to take up management responsibilities when expatriates leave. And this is something that the industry need to work closely with governments to make sure that there is a transition plan and also a training program to make sure that we provide a pool of local experts to take over management responsibilities, particularly in the airline industry.
No, you made a good point for those of our listeners listening in tonight. That's a really good way of looking at career pathways. You're absolutely right with airline management. Not very many locals are part of that. So I think, as you rightly said, there's a lot of expatriates that are taking those positions. So maybe this can be a way forward for many of our young ones taking in all these courses, to look at those two as options for them.
Yes, definitely.
Yes,
and in fact, that's part of our mandate in our association, in to train and develop local people, regional people. So we provide the short-term programs in all facets of the airline operation to give them the necessary knowledge.
Right.
Then they can go back and develop skills. But the problem for us is that we rely on the airlines to do the coaching and monitoring, which I know for a fact that it's not happening. But we need to mold these young kids so that when they acquire this classroom knowledge, they can go back and apply them in the workplace.
Wow.
So there's a lot of coordination that needs to be done to make sure that we put out more local people in those non-technical areas, particularly the non-technical areas. The other problem we face is that just very recently, it's very difficult to find airline management training programs, even in universities. When I went to do the transport economics, I was hoping it would be exclusively airline. But it was a transport. You have rail, you have sea, you have road, and then air. And the reason is there was not enough, not enough material, written material about how to manage an airline. And in addition to that, there were not enough resource people to teach those subjects, even if we have the material. That's why today there are only very few universities that 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 have accredited specific airline management degrees.
Wow.
It has to be part of a other disciplines.
Sanji.
With the exception of aerospace law, aviation law, you can have a degree in every aerospace law, which is specific to aviation, which is very similar to maritime.
I see. Wow,
So
that's
that's one of the
amazing.
reasons why I think the kids are being deterred from pursuing management courses, because of the lack of avenues available in the Pacific Islands. You have to go to Australia and New Zealand. To Massey University in New Zealand is one of those very good aviation management programs. And Australia, there's a few, Griffiths, University of Queensland, and University of Sydney, New South Wales. I think they're also providing those courses. When IATA worked closely with Concordia University in Montreal, they were intending to provide a airline management MBA, but they face the same problem. Not enough written material and not enough resource people to teach those. So they ended up with a general MBA program, which aviation is it's a focus, but it didn't have enough content to qualify them for accredited airline management. I did that program in the early 90s in Concordia.
I see. Wow. And also, George, I understand your children are also involved in aviation. That is amazing.
I think it's all in the family.
Oh, wow. Is that credit to you, George, with I'm sure.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I pointed them, but it's entirely up to them to pursue. So, yeah, two of our sons in the engineering, the aircraft engineering, our two sons, and our daughter is in Suva. As I mentioned, her company she worked for. They were the only non-airline company that organized the repatriation flights to and from Fiji since May last year.
That is
I
so
think at our home, we when they were young, I think we ate and we slept and we talanoa aviation. So in their blood.
So that must have contributed, I'm sure, to their decisions, George.
Yeah, I think we spoiled them a little bit because we took them all over where we went.
Wow, that is beautiful. I'm so happy, to hear in your example where you were able to pass on that passion. I'm sure of aviation to your children. And I keep thinking back to Rotuma. I'm still looking at that little boy running along the beach.
Yes, I know. I said to my wife, we should go back to Rotuma when I retire, because my wife was brought up in Fiji, born and bred in Fiji. So they know where I'll go to Rotuma.
So we are so...
The idea that came to my mind when we were asking you, what do you think about the future development of Rotuma?
Yes.
I was thinking if a lot of Rotumans, when they retire, they decide to go to Rotuma, I think that's a development in itself, because they can improve the homes, build new homes, maybe bring some money to the economy and help. Maybe that's one way. And it's they're helping and enjoying the environment at the same time.
Absolutely. No, you actually raise a good point.
The other thing with Rotuma, in Rotuma, you could never build commercial enterprise in Rotuma because of the culture.
Right.
You can't say no to people when they come and they say, "I'll pay you next week."
Yes,
and I think it's the same with most island environments. One of my friends went to start a business there about 20, 30 years ago. And I warned him, he was brought up like me in Rotuma. He said, I'm going to have to try and change the culture. Business is business. I said, well, I hope you last. Well, he didn't last. And when I met him years later, he said, I tried, but, it's very hard to change the heart of the Rotuman. I can't say no when I know these guys.
Yeah, Nasaranga, you have the heart for your family, and you know, when they need help, I'm sure, you know, there's business side and there's the culture side. Those two, I don't think they kind of yeah, they have to work
It's
parallel. It can't come
inseparable.
together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, dia Nasaranga, yes, Vinaka Bakalemu. And I think I recalled there's a friend of mine, Mary Wesley, who is from Rotuma, and she's based in the United States. She was sharing the picture of their family home, and it really reminded me of what you said, George. That a lot of the homes, the physical structure is still there, but no one is maintaining it. It's empty, and no one goes in, you know, to keep it fresh, you know, keep it occupied and ventilated. So yeah, so I think in addition to the building of houses, maybe the frequency of the planes to fly to Rotuma and maybe the reduction of the airfare might help.
Yeah, I think that can happen because I believe that if the airfare is right, more Rotumans will travel there.
Right.
Because you only need, if you're working, you may need only to go and spend 2 weeks. But you're not going to spend $1,000 or even $600 just to spend 2 weeks there. So I think if the airfare is right, you can generate a lot more income revenue for the airline to make it viable to operate. I think the airline's reluctant; they didn't want to take the risk. I don't think they've done their homework properly, because they probably don't understand the potential market for Rotuma.
Yes.
So I think there's still opportunities there to dialogue with the company. Try it out, or maybe if the government could provide some guarantee for a period of time and see if it works, then you need to remove your subsidy. This is some of the things that we can look at. The government subsidizing shipping to maritime islands in certain routes that are not viable for shipping companies. Something like that could be, trials for the airlines, particularly remote islands like Balabu and Rotuma, where they are very far, and currently the market is very small. But if you can provide the right fare, then you might attract a lot more people to go and increase your revenue and pay for the fuel and your other expenses.
Yes.
So I think there's opportunity there, but there needs to be some more dialogue with the airline.
Right. This is Wow, what a beautiful Talanoa session we've had, George. You've taken us on a free trip to Rotuma, and just beautiful to picture all those beautiful white sandy beaches over there, and the fun, the freedom that you were sharing it with us. We really, really appreciate it, George. So maybe to conclude our Talanoa tonight, is there anything else you would like to say at this time, or people that you want to acknowledge? This is your time, George.
Well, thank you. I think first of all, I want to thank you again for allowing me to be in your program tonight, and also for making this week a Rotuma week. I can't remember whether we had this type of program before. We have a 1 week dedicated to the Rotuman community to celebrate their Dita session, and particularly in a almost a global audience like this virtual audience. So I just want to acknowledge you, and also I'd like to thank God for His grace and mercy on all of us, and also give our best wishes to the Council of Chiefs in Rotuma. Ask God to guide and help them in their deliberations on affairs concerning Rotuma, and all the well-wishes that Rotumans everywhere, those with best intention to help Rotuma. I think we can coordinate our contributions to try and help our island in Rotuma in a way that they would want and not how we want it to happen. I think that's all I wanted to say. And once again, thank you so much. I really enjoyed the informal talanoa we had tonight and the opportunity to share with you the good old days in the 50s and 60s. And, you know, those days will never be, we would never get them back. We can only think about them. And I hope I was able to share those things, those who have not been there or were not there, that they can dream about it and maybe one day go and witness it. Rotuma is still there. The beaches are still there. The people are still there. I think they're waiting for people to come there and enjoy. And lastly, I think we need to keep Rotuma as pristine as possible. No pollution. So thank you so much once again.
Oh,
God
Faeksia.
bless you and your husband for putting up this program. It's a very nice program.
Vinaka, George, we really appreciate your time with us. You also want to acknowledge Marietta Ringamoto for for letting us know. For those of you who are going to be our guests this week, we were so very fortunate, to also talk with her, and just hearing all your talanoa. Even 1 week is not enough. We just we're just so moved, to have this program, to think of people of Rotuma, because the people of Rotuma have contributed so much, to Fiji. And I remember, George, when I was growing up, even in the radio, when they have the radio, the news, it always talks about Viti ke Rotuma. See? Yeah, always. And when I was, growing up, I went to school in Nambua Primary School, and we always celebrate the Ratu Sukuna Day. And, there was always a mention of Rotuma. So when I was a little girl, Rotuma was always in my mind. And then as I, got older, and then when I started doing these programs in New Zealand, working alongside Fesaitu Solomoni, I realized that our people of Rotuma was always in the shadows of Fiji, always in the shadows. And I felt that when I was in New Zealand, before I moved over to Hawaii, I, made, I think, a vow to myself to work with the Rotumans in New Zealand and to support and find avenues, because they're already there. They're already doing their work, which is amazing, as what Fesaitu was talking about, yesterday. The church is running their language classes. The more classes they have, the merrier. But it is just so wonderful that I could utilize this platform and have people like yourself, George, to come on board and tell us these stories that I'm sure, even if I can go on my screen at the moment, there's so many people saying Vinaka Vakalevu to you with all the names. I'm sure you will have time after our talanoa to see everybody connecting in and saying thank you to you, George.
That's very nice. I had never done anything like this before. Most of my conferences are exclusively for aviation. So I'm very comfortable talking about aviation, but I hesitated to come in this program because we're talking about Rotuma and culture and language. Those are the two things that are not really my cup of tea, although I speak fluent Rotuman. But I'm glad that I was able to share the era of the 50s and the 60s. That to me, that was probably one of the best eras in Rotuma. I couldn't talk beyond that, but I'm pretty sure after that would never be compared to the 50s and 60s. Brilliant, lovely time.
Wow.
And it's a shame that not many people could experience that outright. But I know my 10 colleagues in Nandi who, like me, spent those times in the 50s and the 60s would agree that it was a wonderful era to be in it. So we thank God for allowing us to be there.
And we thank God, and thank you as well, George, for your life and your family, for representing Rotuma in the field of aviation, and also for my program, for you to be here to grace this particular space and share your beautiful story with us. And as I was saying to Mrs. Maria Terengamoto the other day, and beside to, and even with Professor Thane, that after telling, talking stories with all of you, I just want to pick up my suitcase tomorrow and go to Rotuma.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're just so thankful, and from all of us here in Hawaii, and for all the Rotumans listening in from all over the world, we just want to say Vinaka Vakalevu to you, George, and we look forward to see. We'll send you an email later on the May 13th, which is the Rotuma Day. We are planning to do a forum, Rotuma forum, so we may call you back on to see if you were available on the day, just 1 hour, similar like this, but with other speakers as well. That will be something that will be awesome for us to hear your story again.
I'll be honored and delighted to be part of that. And once again, I forgot to thank Marita. Marita is my sister-in-law. You probably know by now. Thank you for introducing me to this. Anyway, Vinaka level. God bless Morimanda, along with your husband, and thank you.
You're most welcome.
Bye, and stay safe.
Oh, sarong Vinaka. Lako vale usar kito salolom sarani nandi. Faeksia, Pavini Vinaka sarvale vinaku vale ni George FAKTAUFON. To Pavini Vinaka sarvakalevu veikemuni na no musile chukuna no muni gauna mendoro me Veitalanoa Vinaka na siga nikua. Nako valevu Morimanda. Nako valevu. Yes, so to many of you listening in, Vinaka valevu Sara for spending the time with us this evening. Vinaka Terry Christopher, William Christopher, so Maria Terengamoto, nakavalevo na siya matikumay, buli Vinaka veikemuni kece na wekada na Rotuma, and kami nang siga nikua. Vinaka Vakalevu Rabbi Patiaki, Faith Arieta Bola, Freddie Wesley, nakavalevu Freddie, nakana siya matikumay. Bula sarchikuvi Mary Wesley, America, nakavalevu Mary for the wonderful work you always do, connecting us with your friends from Natambua High School. Bambula sarchikuvi vakalevu veikemuni kece mena ex-Lelin Memorial School, Losa. Naka Betty Rosa Aliti Chione, nakavalevu Sara na siya matikumay. Ni Mataka, join us at 8 o'clock tomorrow. We will have so we'll have another guest tomorrow. He's one of our youths, Rotuma youths. He goes to University of Waikato. Nakavalevu Sara na siya mamay. Thank you so much. Maria Tonopanga, nakavalevu na siya mamay. Noa'ia maalalu. Helen Katapono, naka na siya mutsukumay Sydney. Yeah, Hanisyo, naka, so good to talk about Rotuma, Yeah, Naka Terry, Christopher, we look forward to see you tomorrow. We have another session with one of our youths from University of Waikato. And then on Sunday, we will have Professor Paul Garrity. Yeah, so he's coming on 7 o'clock on Sunday to talk about Rotuma language. Yeah. Yes, thank you so much. We are just so happy to have this program for young people to listen to. I know it's COVID-19 time. This is a good opportunity to talanoa and share history about Rotuma. Yes, Naka Kefi Rogers. Yes, Nakawakalev Sara, thanking everybody listening in from all over the world, from Dubai, from the United States, from Australia and New Zealand. We just want to take this opportunity to thank you all for spending the time to listen to me and Mr. GEORGR FAKTAUFON, who was logging in from Nandi, the western side of Viti. It was a wonderful talanoa session and taking us back to the beautiful island of Rotuma in 1950 and 1960. And also his memories of going over to Lelin Memorial School in the Wilevu. What a beautiful way to go down memory lane and for him to share his beautiful story with all of us, appreciating the freedom and the fresh life that he was raised in Rotuma. And I'm sure that his story will touch our hearts and for all of us to know that one day in the future, when COVID-19 goes away, we can all be able to return to Rotuma. I want to go to Rotuma myself, to go and visit this beautiful place that I've heard from so many of my friends. So Vinaka Vakalev Sara, for everybody listening in, Kalara Salelewa, watching in from Wellington, Helen Catafono, Loretta Mana Grieve, Racheli Flexman, Vinakava Levu, Wrench Bentley, and Thierry. So we just want to take this time to thank you all. Vinaka Vakalevu. So don't forget to log in tomorrow at 8 o'clock. New Zealand time and Fiji time, where we will have another guest of ours, a young person, young Rotuman, who will be sharing his journey in the world of academia and the world of postgraduate studies. Sa Koengaya, Vinaka Sara from the beautiful island of Hawaii, bidding you a beautiful evening. Nisa Mwademanda, Faeksia Hanisio.